Mike Gill, State of Corruption. I'd like to introduce you to someone. His name is Paris Sparrow. Now, I've had many people come and say they wanted to help me, and they're my friends, and they want to support what we're doing. Well, this is one of those individuals. But I'm going to remind you that I am of the thought, when someone says you can trust me, don't. So I was nervous about this gentleman from the beginning. Now, what I'm going to show you is a series of messages. And I want to start by saying they first came in July of 2007, months before the Aganos trial, but during the series of hearings that we would have, okay? Let's start by saying, "Hi, Mike. I'm a friend. I know it's hard to tell." So he's already trying to tell me he's a friend of mine. And he goes on, "I'm here and I'm a real friend. Anytime, if it's you, you know me." Well, I don't know him, but I will tell you what he was doing. He was coming to each of my offices, Manchester, Nashua, Plaistow, unannounced, to have a meeting with me. Now, each time I wasn't there, except for the one time in Plaistow. He came in, again, unannounced. I didn't, as you can see through those messaging, that I didn't respond to him. And when the receptionist told me that he was downstairs, I refused to speak to him. Because again, I've been doing this too long. And I suspected him almost immediately. Instinct. So at this point, the receptionist gave him that message. And he returned and said, "I have information with Shaheen and Tina Naidu and the Naidu family. I want to introduce you to Superior Court Chief Justice Tina Naidu." Now, he opened that door, and I had a meeting with him because of that information. Now, what she does, and which was an important part of this information, was she assigns the cases in the Superior Court. So if I told you about the corrupt network of judges and how these hit judges exist, if they're supposed to be getting these cases randomly, which is what's supposed to happen, and they're not, they're being assigned by her. That's how they control the corruption. So I want you to remember, he got a meeting with me based on giving me that fact and that truth. Remember, the biggest lies always have an element of truth in them. So he had the meeting with me, and he explained that about Tina Naidu. And as you can see, again, I hadn't spoken to him. So what happened was, and I informed you, and I'll show you the form, all 5 Supreme Court justices recused themselves. That's how many you have, 5. Every single one recused themselves on this Aganos case. They know they're the drug cartel. They know Shaheen was part of this leveraging of me and the covering up of this corruption. We just didn't get the drug cartel. Do you remember what I've always said? You've got to take out what protects corruption to get corruption. Well, that was this plan. When you went after the drug cartel, you got Shaheen out of his rabbit hole. And what we just did was Tina Naidu out of her rabbit hole. So she decided to appoint herself on the Supreme Court to rule in my case with 4 other temporary hand-selected judges. How's that for a fix? So what you see, Abby, a year later, August 10th, 254. You see that? And you can see me referring to the fact that I'm in Washington. And I went back to the information he gave me with the connection of Shaheen and Naidu. And I turned around and explained that she put herself on the case. And I reminded him about the information he gave me. For instance, Nadu turned around and said that she goes on vacations with Steve Gordon. Really? He's the lawyer on the case. You don't think that's a conflict? But then she further went on to say, with another couple, and didn't mention their names. I am telling you that couple is Bill Shaheen and Senator Jean Shaheen. That is the corrupt network that I speak of. And her spouse. Well, she doesn't tell us the spouse's name. He doesn't go by Nadu. He goes by Judge Intercosco, who was part of this corruption in family court, who has as many complaints or more complaints than any judge in the state. You see how it works? So I had to be forced to make that phone call to a guy that I didn't necessarily trust. But the information he gave me that day tied in exactly. So you can see his response. The lawyers of a certain age, they vacation, and not with other lawyers. Obviously, they have a great deal to discuss and probably had some things to exchange. What I'm telling you is you're going to see him trying to be vague. You're going to see him turn around and deliver messages to me. But let's go on, but I'm going to help you translate these. So he is making suggestions that he knows that they're all meeting and that they're talking about plans, all right? Now he wants to see talking about being careful and for me to consider what I'm saying. You've discussed a great many people, all at different levels of a pyramid scheme of life. I want you to think about that. Great many people in a pyramid scheme. Those at the very peak haven't been mentioned yet. I mentioned the drug cartel. I mentioned the protection of Shaheen, the corruption in the courts. And here's a guy with inside information telling me that I haven't even reached the level of protection, that these are a lower rung of this network. Three of those people took the role of suing you. Took the role? It's a role that gives life of us roles to play, as you understand, whether you want them or not. I have spent some time with one of these three individuals. All right, now this is an admission of guilt, and this goes further. Those three individuals are the head of the drug cartel: Anagos, Cruz, and Griner. Now, you want to remember now, this guy just said he's spending time with one of them. You're going to find out that that one was Anagos in the very near future. But I want you to understand this. This is a guy who never mentioned to me that he knew Shaheen. Not personally, just knew the Nadu and the connection. Never told me about Anagos. I want you to remember that this guy started coming to my offices and was showing up in every hearing with a camera, with a recorder. And you can see pictures of him in front of the courtroom doing exactly that. So you remember, no mention. And if you think he did mention him, like Aganos, do you think I'd be talking to him? All right. He goes on about having many roles. And it might be prudent not to talk about these three individuals, only just they wouldn't give you actions against you. More punitive. More punitive? What's more punitive than $274 million? And what does more punitive mean? He's sending me a message. These are the individuals that tried to murder me. He's telling me to shut up. What am I doing? These are the individuals who shut down Facebook. You know why they're getting nervous? Because it's getting uncovered. I don't trust AG Sessions, but he's coming to New Hampshire and said the hospitals, the pharmacies, the treatment centers. Who do you think controls these entities but these individuals? That's why they need me to shut up. And then he goes on. This is a huge pyramid of pawns. Really? So the individuals who run the cartel are pawns. And he gives them excuse for more extreme action against you. See, now he's using the word extreme actions. And then you can hear me say, I appreciate your opinion. I don't want to out him at this point. I don't want to turn around and say, what do you mean you've been talking to Aganos? I wanted him to keep speaking. So I go over what's more punitive than 275. I don't fear them. Let these bastards come. So I'm sending them, the cartel, a message through this mole who came to me from the beginning to take evidence, to find out what's going on. So he keeps going on and saying that I shouldn't be saying anything. My advice is be thoughtful. So again, he keeps warning me. Of course, I had expressed some thoughts and no response needed now. See, he expressed some thoughts, but he doesn't want me to question him. He was delivering the threat. He was calling the cartel pawns that they were putting in a position. They were picked to sue me. You know why? Because Shaheen couldn't sue me. Because Sheen was one of the ones who offered me the $50 million settlement. They're the ones I had the evidence on. They are the protection. So right now, the drug cartel and Aganos in particularly feel like they're being squeezed. And guess what? They are. Then I said the next day, which one of the three did you meet? And who'd you speak to? And what is more punitive? What I had to do is keep them talking, and I had to be more direct with them to get information. And then you hear me say, I want to know who you talked to. Then you find out, you know who we talked to? I was introduced to Dick Aganos. He talked to Dick Aganos. So the head of the cartel is the one that he spoke to. And not only, and then he goes on, you've only been normally sued in connection with 4 names. 4 names? There's only 3 defendants. You know the 4th name is? Bill Shaheen, the head of the protection for the cartel. He outs him. And then he goes, I was introduced to Aganos by Bill Shaheen at a critical moment. My business had been illegally closed by the town. And a couple weeks later, my safe and my life savings was stolen. Really? So this guy's got his life savings in a safe. Not a bank, but a safe. So now we just found out that Bill Shaheen introduced him to Aganos. Well, that business was closed in 2010. That means he had known Bill Shaheen longer than 8 years and well enough for him to give him Aganos, who just happens to own a private detective agency. So now we've got this guy, Paris Sparrow, quite literally, introduced to Aganos in the time of great need by Bill Shaheen. So they've known each other for a minimum of 8 years. And again, do you think he would have ever told me that? Let's keep going on. So I've investigated. Bill made a point of introducing to me to Aganos. Then closed. We had a long discussions about Greece, and he seemed quite okay. Even the head of the cartel, which he agreed with, in discussions about his home of Greece, they seem to be okay. You know, the head of the drug cartel. And then he goes on, Bill was, as an uncle, brother of the Fennells, meaning that's who introduced him to Bill Shaheen. So guess what? He knows Bill, and he knows Dick Aganos. And then you hear me say, Shaheen already refused the settlement. I refused their settlement. And that they're putting Dick. So see, what happened was the drug cartel didn't want to sue me. And if you remember early on, those newspapers indicated they didn't want to sue me. They wanted to murder me, which they tried 3 times. And you've seen and listened to a recording of Kill Gil where their enforcer for the cartel refused a contract on my life. Now, Judge Tucker has this also. And then Kevin introduced me to Bill Shaheen per ask request of Bill. And now I'll make a prediction. It says Shaheen throws Aganos under the bus. In fact, we know he already has. Then he's asking me a question, how has he done that? You see what I'm saying? Because he wants to know, again, what I know. He goes in an announcement like what? about Sessions. See, when AG Sessions starts pointing to the hospitals and the pharmacies and the treatment centers, you don't think the cartel's having a heart attack? You don't think Aganos is turning around? They're coming for him? And what you're going to find out here is if you keep going on and you start a battle you haven't won yet, well, the public announcement. So what's he saying is, look at this. Let's say Aganos is being set up to be the fall guy. I want you to hear that statement. Shaheen is setting Aganos up to be a fall guy. This is coming out of Aganos. Well, there's a hell of a lot of assets going to be taken, and things will continue just as before with a new manager. Yes, that's probably the goal. You understand the implications, I'm sure. Again, he's being vague. What he's saying is Aganos is speaking through this Paris Sparrow to talk to me because I reached out. Even the suggestion that I made regarding Shaheen throwing him under the bus, you are hearing Aganos saying that he is. Which you understand, that means he does run and own the cartel. It means Shaheen does protect them. And what Aganos is saying is, because he's seeing Sessions go after the hospitals and all, he's afraid that Shaheen's going to cut a deal with Sessions. That's what politicians do. They're going to give them Aganos. Everybody's going to turn around and say, okay, we got the big drug cartel. And Aganos is saying is Shaheen's motivation, because he put him in this situation, he didn't want to sue me, was to take over his assets. How does this guy have intimate knowledge about Aganos' assets and the implication that he's going to take over? New management. What do you think the new management is? And he's already told you that there's higher levels of corruption beyond Shaheen. Now he keeps going, I mean, you should be careful. Examine everyone's position and their plight. View the act accordingly. What he's telling me is that they're desperate. He goes on to say that Aganos is desperate. Now, how is a guy who just won $274 million, right? It's in appeals for almost 11 and a half months. Why is he desperate? Because the appeals can't rule on this because it is true. They are drug dealers. Shaheen was the attorney, and the FBI knows. So what they're telling me is when you have people like this, think about it. They just tried to murder you before. He's telling me they're going to murder me. That's exactly what he's saying. It's not me. I'm saying there are implications of how she should act, meaning I should be scared. Well, you know what? I'm not. I'm not going to back down. That's exactly what this guy is. So you hear me call him out. And you hear me turn around and say, you didn't tell me you knew them. You've known them for over 8 years. He was a mole from the beginning. Now let's take a look at Paris Sparrow again. How is it that a guy owning a seasonal pizza place in 2010 has all his money stolen from him, okay? Had only met Aganos in the most desperate place in his life, a couple of Greek guys. That's his words. This guy travels the world. I mean, can you explain this to me? Why would a guy that motivated to infiltrate what I'm doing? Why would a guy be that motivated? Yet he is. Now let's take a look where he's gone. For a guy who's stone broke, he's in the last year and a half, he's in Moscow, he's in Turkey, he's in London, he's in Greece, he's in Dubai. This guy's in a different country damn near every month. Now, who could be doing that? Who could be living that kind of life with absolutely no money? I can tell you who. A guy who's in the drug business. You getting it? If you also look at where he's been, he lives in York, Maine. And the place he is in more places than York, Maine, just happens to be Manchester, New Hampshire, the hub of the drug cartel with Aganos in charge. So he spends his time between those, and when he's not in one of those two places, he's traveling the world. Now think about that. And I mean, places that you barely find on the map. In closing, you just turned around and found they gave up this guy as a mole to give me a direct threat. And that threat is real, because that's how these people handle things, by killing you. And that's what they have tried to do. This guy, Paris, is a drug dealer, working direct connections with Aganos. That's why he was protecting himself here. He's telling you that Aganos is desperate and afraid. And you'll see it in the writing that he is. And he's thinking that Shaheen's throwing him under the bus. His words. Because Shaheen, see, when you're corrupt like this, you can't trust anyone. Because you know the guy you're working with is corrupt too. He's thinking that Shaheen's going to give him up, and Shaheen's going to take over his operation. Now, if who's above Bill Shaheen, the head of the corruption in the state, and the drug cartel, he's calling the drug cartel pawns. How about two senators, Senator Jean Shaheen, Senator Maggie Hassan? I mean, who have been more critical of President Trump than them? Wouldn't they be a higher level than them? Look at the issues with the FBI. How often have you seen me deliver evidence to them? This evidence, in fact, what you're reading and seeing here, is the package that I have sent to the Supreme Court of New Hampshire and the FBI in Boston and the AG's office in Washington. And it's going to be put in a portfolio that I'm sending to every representative, congressman that is fighting the FBI and calling them out as being corrupt, including the president. They get to see this too. What could be the higher rung from senators? It's the network of protection that includes the FBI. Again, why the FBI has been targeting the president. It's again why AG Sessions hasn't done anything. You know, when he is calling these hospitals and treatment centers out, that's telling you that he knows about them. It's not telling you that he's closing them yet. Consider the issue that the FBI has. If they went forwards with my evidence, they'd have to admit that they've been getting my evidence for years. And this kind of cartel and corruption could have been over years ago. We could have had a domino effect that went across this country. So it proves that they are protecting them. They just never anticipated to be here at this moment, a moment of crisis. You have a president who's pointing the finger at the FBI. And when the president comes out just yesterday and says the real corruption in this country hasn't been uncovered yet, he's telling the truth, and he knows. That means he knows what we're saying. So the FBI has to cover deal with Shaheen, because if Shaheen's in trouble, and he is, so isn't the FBI. So they're going to throw Aganos under the bus, his words, and he's right. And they're going to try to silence me, whether they have the cartel murder me or turn around and try to force me into a deal. Now you think about this. Who's been under more leverage? From the DRA, from the IRS, from the FBI, from the Supreme Court. I mean, this is what you're saying. When have you heard someone lose a case and be absolutely truthful, but absolutely with evidence and witnesses that would have put them in jail for $274 million? This is what happens. When you refuse their offer for $50 million, they leverage you for another $274 million. Just yesterday, they sent a subpoena to my house for my son Michael's Jr.'s bank accounts. Leverage your children. And that's what they're doing now. I want you to understand the importance of what this is. This is an admission of guilt. This Paris Sparrow could be a witness, and a critical witness, with important information. I want you to know that the FBI already has this, as the Supreme Court of New Hampshire. And I'm asking you to share this information. This is critical. Tell your friends. We're going to put it up on YouTube. But understand, State of Corruption on Facebook had 300,000 followers. We had videos that were being viewed 4 and 5 million. They had to take us out. We are in a war. And in a war, what's the first thing you attack is communications. They don't want you to know what I'm telling you. The next thing we'll do is to take out mortgage specialists or the funding for this. They take out the supply lines. So again, listen to this, read it. This is hard evidence. Know that those are my statements and his statements. See those pictures. Know that he was showing up at those hearings. Know that he would have never told me he knew Aganos and Shaheen. Never mind being friendly with them. And when they say 4, they're including Shaheen. See? And you see how evasive he was. Okay. Mike Gill, State of Corruption.